All right. Good morning, everyone. Let's start our Wednesday class. Om Guru Brahma, Guru Vishnu, Guru Devo Maheshwara, Guru Sakshat Parbrahma, Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Om Bhurбhuvaswaha, Tatsavitra Bhargo Devasya Dhimahi, Dhiyo Yo Nah Prachodayat. Asto Ma Satgamya, Tamso Ma Jyotirgamya, Mrityorma Amritam Gamya. Om Sahnavavtu Sahnabhanatu Saviryam Karvavahi Tejasvi Navadhitamastu Ma Vidvishavahi. Om Shanti 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 Om. We often talk about desires. The human mind is made to desire. It cannot refrain from creating desires that it thinks will bring happiness. Okay, that means we all desire to be happy. Some of us desire for material happiness, and some seek spiritual bliss. In both the cases, desire exists in the mind. And it is the decision of the intellect that defines where we look for happiness. Think about it. It is the mind alone which is the cause of bondage and liberation. Manaiva manukshanam karnam bandha moksha. It is well established that true happiness or bliss can be found in God alone. Alone. And the intellect has to make the firm decision that God is our goal. And once the intellect has decided, the mind has no choice but to work towards this goal. Naturally, desires that arise thereon will center around God. And all things related to God. And in contrast to that, an intellect deluded by Maya will only seek material bliss. As long as its decision says that happiness lies in the material world. These words echo in Lord Krishna's words, where he is elaborating the nature of desire in the 37th verse of the 3rd chapter of Bhagavad Gita. Lord Krishna is telling Arjuna, Kamesh, Krodhesh, Rajogun, Samudhva, Mahashano, Mahapapama, Vidyanam Ihi, Varinam. What is he saying? He says it's a lust alone, which is born of contact with the mode of passion and later transformed into anger. Kamesh, Krodhesh. Know this as the sinful, all-devouring enemy in the world. These are the words of Bhagavan Krishna. Very. The Vedas use the word kam or lust not only for sexual desires, but also to include all desires for material enjoyment. This material enjoyment, which is based upon the bodily concept of the self. That means we are the body. Or very often people say we live only once. That's a bodily concept. Body is living in this few years of life. But Atma keeps on living. So if we identify with the body, we say, yeah, we live only once. Let's enjoy the matter. Lust shows itself in many ways. The urge for money, physical cravings, craving for prestige, drive for power, etc. Remember that this lust is only a perverted reflection of love for God, which is the inherent nature of every living being. So Atma loves God, but we get perverted. We get deluded with this Maya. When the soul associates with the material energy in the form of the body, its divine love for God is transformed into lust in association with the mode of passion, which is Rajasita. That's what Lord Krishna is trying to convey to Arjuna and to us also in Bhagavad Gita. Tomorrow is Janmashtami. Sure, we sing bhajans. Some people do ras also. Some people fast also. But if we do not understand the words of Bhagavan Krishna on his birthday, celebrating his birthday is futile. Since divine love is the highest power of God, its perversion in the material realm, which is lust, is also the most powerful force in worldly activities. And Lord Krishna identifies this lust for worldly equipment as the cause of sin. Papama, as the malignant allure sitting within us. The mode of passion, the Rajasita, deludes the soul into believing that worldly objects will give satisfaction. So one creates desires for acquiring them more and more and more. When desire is satisfied, it gives birth to greed. We want more. When it's not satisfied, it gives rise to anger. So that's why he said, Kamesha, Krodesha. They are connected. One commits a sin under the influence of all three: lust, greed, and anger. Three doorways to hell. Greed is nothing but intensified desire. Okay? That is greed, intensified desire. While anger is a frustrated desire. You have the desire, it could not be fulfilled, and you are frustrated. Hence, Shri Krishna labels lust or desire as the root cause of all evil. We need to reflect on this. Knowledge of what is right and what is wrong, we all know it's called Vivek, discrimination. And this discrimination, where does it reside? It resides in our intellect. But this lust is such a formidable adversary, and it clouds the discriminating ability of the intellect. It veils it. Lord Krishna cautions Arjuna again in the verse 39 of the same chapter. He says, Avritam jnanam etena jnanino nitya varina kam rupen kaunteya dushpuren analena cha He says the knowledge of even the most discerning gets covered by this perpetual enemy in the form of insatiable desire, which is never satisfied and burns like fire. O son of Kunti, such a clear message, such a strong message from Bhagwan, whose birthday we celebrate every year, or we pray to him every day. Here, the inimical nature of kama or lust is being made even more explicit in this verse. So, kama means desire, dushpuren means insatiable, and anal means fire, which is inexhaustible. Look at the choice of the words over here. He's knocking it on our head. He wants us to wake up. Desire overpowers the discriminatory power of the wise and lures them to fulfill it. We get deluded. The more they attempt to douse the fire of desire, the more strongly it burns. We were talking about it yesterday in our conversation. In verse 40 of the same chapter, Lord Krishna says, Indriyani manobuddhir tasya adhishtanam uchyate etir vimoha itesha jnanam avritya dehinam. He says the senses, the mind, the intellect are said to be breeding grounds of desire. Because we often wonder, if desire is the enemy, where is this enemy sitting? Lord Krishna says it sits in your senses, mind and intellect. Through them, it clouds one's knowledge and dilutes the embodied soul. So he's revealing the locations where lust resides. And Lord Krishna is indicating that there is a method of controlling it. So he says it resides there, but how to control also? So the fortress of the enemy must be spotted before we can lay a siege on it. So in this verse, Lord Krishna states that the senses, mind, and intellect are the places from where lust exercises its dominion over the soul. So it's all inside us. Under the sway of lust, the sense objects are desired by the senses. Eyes want to see more and more. Nose want to smell everything. The ears want to hear. Hands want to touch. Mouth want to taste. So under the sway of lust, the sense objects are desired by the senses infatuate the mind misleads the intellect, and the intellect loses its discrimination. That power to discriminate, power to decide what is wrong, what is right, power to decide what is temporary, what is permanent. When the intellect is clouded, the living being is deluded to become a slave of lust and will do anything to satiate it. These are our instruments. The senses, mind, and intellect. They are not bad in themselves. They're very powerful instruments. In fact, the Vedic seers, they call them devatas. They were given to us for the purpose of achieving God realization. But we have permitted lust in its many forms to lay siege on them. Now we have to use the same senses, mind, and intellect to uplift them. That's why that famous verse, Maneva Manushyanam Karnam Bandh Moksha. Mind can uplift us, or the same mind can drown us too. How then can we overcome desire, if desire is the culprit here, so that the mind rests in peace forever? The secret lies in a very fundamental error in our judgment. Deep inside our intellect, a decision lies firmly entrenched that we are the body. So this we have to change. So all that we associate is usually with the body or the mind. Subsequently, all that we seek at the source of happiness is material in nature. What can we eat? Where can we go? What can we touch? Because we think that providing pleasure to the body will give us happiness. In short, we consider the individual identity to be the body. It is ingrained in us. Not just in this lifetime, from countless lifetimes. We associate ourselves with the body and consider the I to be this gross body. This is the fundamental error. If we realize the true I is the soul, which means I am the soul and not the body, we will automatically begin searching for happiness related to the soul. It's that simple. It's not very complicated. We have to just turn it around. We are looking towards the Maya. We have to just switch, turn towards God. Very simple. We associate our true identity with the body and run after the pleasures of the body, comforts of the body. See, necessities for the body we need a shelter, we need clothes, we need food. But beyond that is comfort. But not just comfort, we want luxuries also. That is the problem. Lord Krishna in the same chapter continues his very important sermon to Arjun in verse number 42. He says, Indriyani pranyahur indrebhya paramana manastu parabuddhi buddhi parastu sa. He says the senses are superior to the gross body. And superior to the senses is our mind. Beyond the mind is the intellect. And beyond the intellect is the soul. And inferior entity, the body is inferior to the senses. So inferior entity can be controlled by the superior entity. Okay. So Lord Krishna explains this gradation of superiority among the instruments God has provided to us. There are inferior instruments, then there are superior instruments. He describes that the body is made of the gross matter. We all know that body is made out of Panchatattva. The earth, water, fire, air, space. Panch Tattva. Superior to it are the 5 knowledge-bearing senses, which grasp the perception of taste, touch, sight, smell, and sound. Tanmatras. Beyond the senses is the mind, he says. So superior to the senses is the mind, and superior to the mind is the intellect. Intellect with its ability to discriminate. But then he doesn't stop there. He says beyond the intellect is the divine soul. This knowledge of the sequence of superiority among the senses, mind, intellect, and soul can be used for rooting out lust. Okay, so that's where this knowledge is important. This knowledge is not just to memorize. Knowledge is not just to recite. We need to learn how to use this knowledge. And Lord Krishna explained that in the final verse of this chapter. Evam buddhe param buddhva sansthabye atmanah jahi shatrum mahabahu kam rupam durasadam. He says, knowing the soul to be superior to the material intellect, O mighty armed Arjuna, subdue the self, that means the senses, mind, and intellect, the lower, the inferior part of you, by the self, that means the strength of the soul, the real you, and kill this formidable enemy called lust. So the instruments which are given to us, use them the way they need to be used. So in conclusion, Lord Krishna emphasizes that we should slay this enemy called lust through knowledge of the self. Since the soul is a part of God, it is divine in nature. And that's why this divine bliss it seeks can only be attained from a divine subject. The matter is not divine. While the objects of the world are all material. These material objects can never fulfill the innate longing of the soul, and so it is futile to create desires for them. We must exert and train the intellect to think in this manner. This is called sadhana. Training is the sadhana. And then use it to control the mind and the senses. Of course, senses would like to go outwardly, but mind should control. Mind which is guided by the intellect. And the same thing we learned when we studied Kathopanishad. With the help of a model of a chariot. In the first chapter, verse number 33, the young boy Nachiketa was told by Yamraj that this body is like a chariot. The 5 senses are like the horses. Wherever the horses run, the chariot goes that way. Similarly, whatever the senses perceive, the body reacts to it. The horses can run amok if given a free hand. Desires to do that. And the outcome of this is a disaster, which is imminent. So if the senses are given total freedom, it will lead the body to no man's land. The horses are controlled by reins. If they run wild, they are reined in with the ropes. So the senses are controlled by the mind. It is the mind that wishes to see, hear, feel, touch, and taste. If the mind decides against looking at an object or eating that very sweet candy, the sense organs cannot do anything but obey the command of the mind. For example, if you're already full in your stomach and somebody puts your favorite meal in front of you, what will be your reaction? Will you devour it? Most likely not. What if the reins are not held tight? The horses will still run wild. The charioteer is the one who controls the reins. If he is skilled and powerful, the reins will be tight and he will lead the horses in the right direction. The chariot will automatically go on the right path. In exactly the same way, a superior intellect controls the mind. Even if the mind runs astray, a well-developed intellect will instruct the mind about the harmful effects of letting the senses go wild and prevent the mind from thinking in the wrong direction. So that's why the daily study of the scriptures, it could be a thought of the day, it could be a message of the day. Keep on putting something in your mind. Sharpen your intellect. Expand your horizon this way. We have the chariot, the horses, the reins, and the charioteer. What we are missing is the passenger on the chariot. It is there, but we don't pay attention to it. For all practical purposes, we never think about it. Who is the owner of this all? He is almost like a silent rider at the mercy of the charioteer. Wherever the chariot goes, the passenger has to go. And the passenger is the soul. That's who we are. So we have a body, chariot, the five senses, the horses, the mind, reins, and the intellect, charioteer. But to think about it, the passenger, the soul. The soul does not perform any action, but soul is the actual benefactor of the thoughts and actions collectively performed by the intellect, mind, and the senses. If the horses are controlled with the reins, with a fully awakened charioteer, the passenger will enjoy the ride. Otherwise, everything goes into the ditch, including the passenger, the owner. So soul does not perform any action, but as the actual benefactor of the thoughts and actions collectively performed by the intellect, mind, and the senses. Seated on this chariot, the soul passenger is moving around in this material world since eternity, actually. We think that our journey started only a few decades ago. No. Started many, many lives ago. Countless lives. So the purpose of existence, having this human body, is to reach its final destination. Final destination is God. Final destination for the soul, who we are. That is called going back home. If the chariot, the body, goes the wrong way, the passenger, the soul, will reach the wrong destination. And outcome of that is suffering. Suffering. The real happiness, the real joy, the bliss is reaching home, not wandering into this jungle of Maya. On the other hand, if a body driven by the senses is controlled by a strong mind, restful mind, which in turn is governed by a superior intellect, the soul can reach its destiny. It's not that hard. If the soul wakes up to its higher nature and decides to take a proactive role, it can exercise the intellect in the proper direction. So direction is given by the intellect. So in the example of the chariot, the direction is given by the intellect, the driver, who holds the reins, the ropes. Intellect will then govern the lower self. Lower self means the inferior instruments of ours, which are the senses, the body, and the mind, or you can say mind and the senses. And the chariot will move in the direction of eternal welfare. In this way, the higher self, soul, must be used to control the lower self, the senses and the mind. This is what Lord Krishna is telling us. In the third chapter, which is just a beginning of his sermons, because he started speaking from chapter 2. This is towards the end of the chapter 3. And I'm sure you all know chapter 3 is a Karma Yoga chapter. He's not saying that sit back and don't do anything. Karma Yoga, do your duties. But do your duties while keeping your mind alert, calm. Keep on enriching your intellect. Direct the mind properly, keeping an eye on the goal also. From here, what I see is he's telling us give up endless desires. Keep on increasing the desires. Sure, we were born because we had desires, but pay attention to it. When we leave this chariot of ours this time around, are we going to have more desires or less desires than what we came here with? Remember, the peace of mind comes not by enhancing our material possessions, but by eliminating our desires. Keep that in mind. Second message over here is that give up sense of proprietorship. Remember, everything in the world belongs to God. You don't own anything. These instruments are given to us by God. The nature is His. This Prakriti is His. And this body, mind, and intellect, they are made out of the Prakriti. So give up the sense of proprietorship. Remember, everything in the world belongs to God. We came empty-handed, we'll go away empty-handed. The third message is give up ego. The biggest reason for strife between people is their egos. The way to peace is not to nurture it, but to get rid of it. Because we want peace. Ego is a wall between two people also, between us and the God also. Lower this wall. The yogis, you can call them the self-realized saints, they experience everlasting peace and bliss because they have worked on their mind, worked on their intellect through sadhana. But to learn to purify our mind through bhakti. In fact, for anyone, everlasting peace can become a practical reality when he or she engages in devotion to God. We'll see that Lord Krishna talks about it in the future chapters. By attaching the mind to the all pure God, the mind gradually becomes purified and experiences its much cherished ideal for peace and bliss. So this was the message for today. Let's end with this prayer. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vishishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Thank you very much.